One is an insight into the inner drama of Hollywood, the other an attempt to create a perfected version of the original screenplay. What price Hollywood? They remade it.
Hi, and welcome back to They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Here we are again on this nice, chilly evening, just doing our thing.
It is so cold.
It's so cold, oh my god.
You looking forward to the Christmas season? It's upon us again.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to have a nice week off from work after I do, 3 days of extra work. But, whatever.
That's good. I got a month off right now.
Damn, nice.
I'm in the process of looking for another job, but since it's the holiday season, it's going to impact hiring. You know how that is. Well,
yeah,
maybe not directly, but...
Just waiting on people getting their pink slips at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah.
Also, everyone's off, so it's why are we going to hire this guy and then just give him a bunch of vacation hours?
Yeah, true.
I mean, that's the way the world is.
Capitalism.
Well, this country is. You are our saving grace, my Lord. I pray to you at night and put money on the tray. You come down and take it away.
We pray to our almighty saint, Ayn Rand.
I throw some change into the fountain head, and I never get it back.
Andrew Ryan is my dad.
Puppy? Okay, so
Anyway,
what do you been watching this week? These couple weeks?
really not a lot. I've had a lot of stuff on in the background. I've been making Christmas gifts for the family, and I've had my usual MST3K in the background. I'm trying to catch up on all those.
I mean, that still does count, yeah.
Yeah. And I only recently realized that they actually have the original series on Netflix as well. Not all the episodes, but some of them.
They have a fair amount of the episodes as well. I don't know if they still have it, but the first MST3K I ever saw, I didn't get to see it when it was on TV or when it was re-aired on Comedy Central. But the first one I saw was for Santa Claus the movie, and that one was on Netflix at the time. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I've still been watching the newer one recently, which they're actually really good.
All right.
But beyond that, I don't. Oh, I saw there was another. It was a Netflix special. It was called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's
What the hell is that?
It's got. I'm trying to remember the name of the actor, but he's in a couple random things. He was in Oh Brother Where Art Thou as this one character, but it's actually a bunch of smaller stories. It's a dark humor Western kind of movie. Emphasis on the dark. It wasn't that funny. It's just a lot of points where it's just very abrupt and kind of sad death. And it's I think it banks a lot of its comedy on the fact that a lot of its stuff is unexpected or just ridiculous in its level of violence it actually is. There's this one scene in particular where, at a poker table, this one guy is pointing a gun at the main character, and the way the main character fixes the situation is he kicks down on the table, and a board pops up, and as a lever, and it knocks the guy pointing the gun, it knocks his hand up and makes him point his gun up at his head, and it sets it off, and he does that 3 times. It's it's ridiculous, and we just see a man just point blank shoot himself in the head 3 times and then fall over.
That sounds hilarious.
It's the way it's presented. It's just kind of just there. It's not even terribly funny about it. It's just kind of bam. Oh,
That actually kind of sounds like, I mean, not the shooting and definitely not the Western, but have you ever seen the movie Election? With Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon?
I don't think so. I think I've seen the tail end of it.
Matthew Broderick is a teacher at a high school, a politics teacher or something like that, and Reese Witherspoon is a student at the school, and she's super popular and she's running for president, and she looks up to him and is the best student in her class, but because of how popular she is, he comes to hate her and is trying to thwart her campaign for class president. It's really dark humor to the point where you're not really laughing at it. You're just like, I can't believe that just happened, and you're really uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's a lot that sounds exactly like Buster Scruggs. And with like, I don't care about spoiling it because like it's not. I can't really say I recommend it because like it's also kind of got that low quality Netflix feel where it's like it seems like they use a very basic editing software. Like there's gore and there's dismemberment, but it's very blatantly CG'd in.
Right.
There's like this one point where there's a there's like a man and his daughter. They're out in the plains like rounding up their herd, but then they get beset on by like a pack of Apaches or Native American or Plains Indians, and he says to his daughter at one point, he hands her a pistol, and he says to her, "If I go down, you don't want to get captured by them. Just point this at your head and pull the trigger." And so, at one point, he takes down most of them, but then he gets clubbed over the head, and it seems like he's dead. But then he pops back up and shoots the clubber. But then when he goes back over to his daughter, it's found that she's already shot herself, having thought that he was dead. And it's like the entire scene is not funny at all. It just plays out pretty straight face, like kind of just a modern kind of more realistic depiction of the Old West. And it's just like, oh my God, we just see this girl just laying, this like young teenage girl just laying dead in the field with a bullet wound in her head. It's like, fuck.
It's like the Twilight Zone.
It's not even like surreal. It's just legitimately very sad. It's just like this man walks over to find his daughter dead, and he has to just wander off without his horse got shot and everything, so he just wanders off into the distance. It's like, Jesus Christ.
How upsetting.
Yeah, like there was a few chuckle moments, but for the most part, it really is just it just goes, haha, sudden death is funny. It's like, fucking hell.
I'll have to look at that.
I need to look and see if it had anything to do with Seth Rogen, because it feels all the life of me like it's a Seth Rogen. Like even James Franco's in it at one point.
Really?
So, yeah, he has like they each like there's a bunch. Like I said, it's a bunch of smaller stories wrapped together. At one point, there is a story that has him as the lead.
No, I mean it feels like a Seth Rogen thing.
It really kind of does. Like the very, just just quick punch sort of like kind of punchline where it's just like the punchline is it's just literally just someone clapping in your ear.
How often do they say fuck?
Surprisingly little. It's actually like that's kind of the added surrealness to it, that they're actually very eloquent and pretty low with vulgarity, but it's still very brutal.
I will have to find this movie.
Yeah, it's a Netflix special. It's Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I saw it advertised on my feed forever, but I guess it's just because I watch a lot of westerns.
All right.
But yeah, after I've taken for freaking ever to explain mine, you watched anything?
Yes, I have done nothing. I've watched like nothing.
Oh, well, all right then.
I feel
don't feel so
great.
bad.
The only thing that I can comment on is for the past 2 weeks, I've just listened to, I can't even say a specific YouTuber, I've just been listening to video after video by countless different people where they just read true horror stories, and that's it. I do that every now and again, but I guess that's like a podcast or like a radio style thing. I haven't actually watched anything.
I'm sure I've recommended it to you before. Have you listened to Lore, the podcast?
Yeah, I actually have.
Okay.
I have, I think, 20 episodes in the backlog. I'm starting to get a backlog on a lot of the podcasts I'm subscribed to, just because I've been doing a lot of stuff where it's not easy to listen to a podcast here recently, so I need to get caught up on all of that. But yeah, I like Lore. I like the creepiness of it, and they talk about cryptids every now and again, and I like cryptids, so.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I need to catch up on it myself. I haven't listened to it in a few months.
Mm-hmm. But I guess that's it. We were both kind of lame this time around. Well, at least you actually watched something.
Well, I mean, fair enough, but that was mostly just in the background.
Well, it was there. All right. So you want me to get into this?
Yeah, go right ahead. This is your deal this time.
All right, my deal. So, keeping in common theme with what we've been doing the last couple of episodes, I'm going to give a synopsis of the first film, and then for the second, I'm just going to highlight some of the bigger differences that affect the story. So, starting off with What Price Hollywood, 1932, directed by George Cukor. We start off with Miss Mary Evans, played by Constance Bennett, who is a waitress that aspires to be an actress in the moving picture business, and she soon gets her chance when famous director Maximilian Carey, played by Lowell Sherman, dines at her diner one evening. Being drunk, he takes her out to Grauman's Chinese Theater, and apparently the two of them have some fun over the course of the evening. The next morning, not remembering the previous night, he finds Mary in his home as she helped him get back, and she reminds him that she was promised a screen test with him. He relents. At said screen test, Mary fails to deliver, and Max calls it for the day. Worried she'll be replaced, she spends all night practicing the scene in her screen test, and immediately goes back in and succeeds, as determined by producer Julius Sachs, played by Gregory Ratoff, and she is signed a contract. She soon later, after filming quite a bit, meets polo player Lonnie Borden, played by Neil Hamilton, and they fall for one another in a series of do they fall for one another scenes.
In that 37 form of, 1930s version of, is this acceptable by today's standards? The answer is a hard no.
No, nowhere close to that. But, as it is the 1930s, they soon enough get married, and it only propels Mary higher into the spotlight via the tabloids. However, it's soon revealed that Lonnie cannot stand to roll with the Hollywood crowd, and after one particularly bad night for Max, he's a heavy drinker, Mary brings him in and Lonnie heads out. They get divorced, all the while Mary is expecting a baby. She eventually wins Best Actress at the Academy Awards, but unfortunately her night is ruined with Max in prison for drunk driving. She pays his bail and puts him to bed in her home, only for him to kill himself via shooting later in her dressing room. Mary,
just kind of like you do.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Mary, distraught and upset with the tabloids blowing up everything, flees to Paris with her young son, now birthed, to protect him and get better mentally. Lonnie soon arrives in Paris asking for another chance, and we end there, assuming everything will be okay. Now, moving on to A Star is Born, 1937, directed by William A. Wellman and a few other uncredited individuals who I guess punched up the script or maybe just helped in when he was sick.
Yeah, the IMDb is just filled with uncredited people.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in the full circle. Like, people that I could not find in the actual movie that we've apparently seen before in bigger roles. This picture follows the original in almost every way, with only a few differences that really affect the plot. Firstly, rather than starting with Mary working at a diner, we have Esther Blodgett, played by Janet Gaynor, who is later renamed Vicky Lester by the studio to make her more appealing to the audiences. And she lives in North Dakota, soon, with the help of her grandmother, leaving for Hollywood so that she can make it big. So there's no diner there, but we'll get to that. She is helped by an assistant director named Danny McGuire, played by Andy Devine. He eventually gets her work as a waitress for a big Hollywood party where she meets Norman Maine, played by Frederick March, an actor who helps her make it big, while in the meantime his own fame is fading. He essentially takes the place of Lonnie, the husband, and Max, the director, from What Price Hollywood. There is no real divorce in this film, rather he goes away to a sanitarium at one point in an attempt to clean himself of his alcoholism, although the film's outcome is practically the same, with Norman offing himself by walking into the sea in front of their home, committing suicide by drowning. And those are, that's really the only big difference, that sort of condensing of roles there. Besides that, the same story beats are there.
Yeah, it's kind of the only major difference is, like, Norman is an alcoholic, whereas Max is like a lush.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have any big outbursts. He sort of wobbles around.
He's just that slow simmer, kind of.
Yeah. So, yeah. without further ado, I'm going to keep talking because I haven't talked enough by going into the full circle really quick. And I'm not going to linger on this one because there are quite a few, but a lot of them we can't really... I had trouble verifying through watching just because of how many, like you said before, how many people go uncredited in a lot of these early movies.
Yeah, they're kind of dicks about that back then.
Yeah.
But then again, at least the credit run was short.
Yeah, that's true. It's like one frame, I think.
You could do it in the beginning of the movie. It was nice.
So, starting off, of course, with What Price Hollywood, 1932, we have one connection, and that is to the George Clooney version of Ocean's 11. This being the composer, or uncredited composer of What Price Hollywood, Max Steiner. Apparently he did all the music and compositions for the film, and he's responsible for one very famous piece, which in typical me fashion I don't remember being in Ocean's 11, and that is called Maui and Johnny's theme.
I'm sure they played it in the background as like a reference.
Probably. But, so the piece is called Maui and Johnny's theme. I dug into it a little bit, and apparently it's colloquially... I can never say that word. It's more well known as the theme from the movie A Summer Place, which I actually do know. As soon as I read that title, I was like, oh, I know that theme. And I'm going to play about 20 seconds of it right now. Iconic.
Yeah, it has that very, elevator waiting room, kind of Always Sunny in Philadelphia feel to it.
Definitely. I think they've actually used it in a couple episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, though I know it best from the episode Homer's Barbershop Quartet from The Simpsons.
Of course.
Where they're having tryouts for someone to replace Chief Wiggum, and Jasper's audition piece is themed from A Summer Place, where he sings along to the tune, just with the words, theme from A Summer Place.
From a summer place, from a summer place, the theme from a summer place, it's the theme.
So,
that's nice.
Yeah. But that's it for What Price Hollywood. To be honest,
I kind of figured. I'm surprised there weren't going to be more with like.
Sorry.
I'm surprised there weren't going to be more with like Scarface.
Well, we'll get into that.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. To be honest, there weren't a lot of people in What Price Hollywood. I don't think there were any actually that I knew. But A Star Is Born. We'll get into that right now.
Yeah.
So, A Star Is Born, 1937. Let's first go into Ocean's 11 from 1960, because that'll take no time at all. We have one connection, the actor Joe Gray, who played a pit boss in Ocean's 11, and in A Star Is Born played the role of Garcia. This film was actually, according to sources online, it seems to be his first film role. So, that's a thing. Moving on from there, we have one other film connection, and that's Scarface 1932. Going down the list, we have actor Francis Ford, who played William Gregory in A Star Is Born, and in Scarface was a prison guard in the alternate ending to the movie.
Cool.
Where he gets tried in court and everything. We have actor Dennis O'Keefe, who was a patron at the nightclub in Scarface, and he was a party guest in A Star Is Born, I suppose, at the party that she first waitresses. We have actress Virginia Dabney, who played Mabel in Scarface, and she was uncredited in A Star Is Born. It just lists her as being in the film, so I'm guessing it's a possible extra role.
Probably.
The most prominent one, though, that I could find is Osgood Perkins. Actor Osgood Perkins, who was Johnny Lovo in Scarface.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was Otto in A Star is Born. And A Star is Born was actually his last film role before his death. Yes.
Well, what do you know?
Yes. It's worth noting, I don't have it written down because it was very confusing. I found reference to Vincent Barnett, I believe was his name, who was the actor who played Angelo in Scarface, who was like our favorite character in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
With the phone bit and everything. Apparently he was in A Star is Born 1937 as well, but it also credits him as Otto. Same as Osgood Perkins. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I did diving, but it was incredibly hard for me to find anything because the vast majority of A Star is Born stuff that's going to pop up is from the Barbra Streisand version or the Garland version or the new version that just came out with Gaga and Cooper. So...
God, there's too many fucking versions of this.
Yeah, we have,
how many are there?
5?
Like 5? Yeah.
We have 5 because we have 4 named A Star is Born, and then we have What Price Hollywood. So
yeah,
that's 5. That's 5 versions of the same movie.
Yep.
But I mean that's it for connections. So as per usual, with me jumping off of this segment, where do you want to take us first?
Oh man, it's just it's always difficult for me to like, because old Hollywood stuff, and this movie is steeped in old Hollywood. It is steeped and pickled in it.
Both of these.
Yeah, like their entire point of it, which like I wasn't expecting going into it. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it. It's a movie in the 30s. It's always going to be. It's so many movies in the 30s are about Hollywood in and of itself, which is weird to think about considering how young it still technically was. Like, not a whole lot had really come out for it at that point. It had already become such a huge, just mass of pop culture and everything. It's so difficult to kind of wrap my head around it, I guess. Like, because I've never been the type to get into like Hollywood drama, but that's the entirety of this movie. And you definitely know that a lot better than I do.
Right. I wonder if a lot of that
both these movies, I should say.
I wonder if a lot of that stems from just how mired in mystique a lot of Hollywood was to people. It was creating, for the first time in probably forever, it was creating so many household names in such a short amount of time. It was so easy. Well, obviously they had a lot of work to do, but from the public's perspective, so easy for, oh, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person. It's the same thing I assume that happened to authors. So maybe it was just natural progression for them to go into it. Maybe, I don't know the origins of the screenplay. Perhaps it was based on a particular experience.
Maybe.
That someone had, and they were like, well, this is just drama. We could make this because we're making dramatic films or dramatic pictures, especially now that we have sound that we can utilize.
Well, isn't this basically just... Isn't this kind of like the origin of that, kind of now stereotypical story of young, innocent girl goes to Hollywood to make it big, learns the harsh realities of show business sort of deal?
I don't know of another movie that did that before, let's say, What Price Hollywood, since that came first.
Yeah.
But there's definitely not a franchise that is more associated with that, I don't think.
Right. Because that trope has been around, has stuck around, even basically unaltered in a lot of ways. Like, there was a recent movie that came out. It's The Rules Don't Apply. It was about Howard Hughes, and it's centered around these two fictional characters, but it was mainly kind of to frame, Howard Hughes's later period, like the later period of his life, as he was really kind of losing it.
I've not heard of this.
It's really good. I can't remember I can't remember the name of the actor in it, but I'll probably look it up here in a minute. But
that's fine. I'll just
it's like
remember.
apparently the main actor who plays Howard Hughes was also the director, and he had been apparently trying to make it for years. But it really is. It has that exact same framing device. Like, the main female lead is just the young innocent girl who gets swept up into the whole Howard, and like Howard Hughes, sees her as like another potential love interest bullshit or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
like she becomes a very, very brief, Hughes girl. And so that's what kind of kicks it all off. And it's actually really good. I didn't appreciate it enough when I first saw it. But it's just that sort of thing where that trend is basically was invented. It seemingly invented. I mean, obviously it's based off a very real trope. Like a lot of women and especially young girls got swept into Hollywood and basically chewed up by pretty shitty directors. But and then having it actually brought to the screen was the first time with What Price Hollywood. And
Right.
like I was actually really surprised to see how What Price Hollywood did it, because it kind of like I was expecting Max to end up being a complete bastard. Like it was going to end up because I was thinking I should say like like on record that I actually watch these in the incorrect order. I normally try to watch the original first and then the remake, but I forgot what the original one's name was. So I ended up watching the 37 version first, thinking that we were going to do one of the other versions as a remake, like the 1954 version.
Right.
But then,
it's the black sheep.
Exactly. And then so I found out, oh, okay, there's actually one that was earlier. And so when I was going into it, I was thinking, okay, this Lonnie, is it Lonnie?
Lonnie's the husband.
Lonnie. I thought Lonnie was going to end up
player.
being kind of like the comparative star. Like he was going to be the equivalent to Norman in A Star Is Born. And so I was thinking, okay, he's going to be the like guy who ends up offing himself like Norman did. He's going to be the one who's going to be seeing his whole career go down in flames, whereas Max is going to be kind of this extra foil to the situation, where he's this alcoholic dude who's going to be making the girls, like he's going to be making Mary's life a living hell and that sort of thing. But then he ends up being the once great and then fallen character in this arc, and actually creates a really cool dichotomy. Like I thought it was going to go for the very real situation of what happened with a lot of directors back then, that they really were just shitty to their actresses. Like I mean, hell, fucking Alfred Hitchcock, if you want to have an example. And when it didn't, I was actually really surprised and really interested. It created a really cool relationship between Mary and Max that I actually loved a lot more than I loved between the relationship of Esther and Norman in A Star Is Born.
Right. Well, I mean, for the 30s being that still early in the life of cinema, it would have been... I can't imagine a director wanting to do a movie where the director's portrayed as a bad guy, regardless of how they behaved.
Oh, yeah.
It's so early on, I can't see that being... I mean, prove me wrong. Maybe there's a movie out there that is around that time frame that depicts that, but I can't.
I mean, none that I can
it.
think of. You'd know it better than I would.
Right. Well, I clearly do not.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you did know that, you would.
Right. But no, that's actually sort of a cool jumping off point. I haven't seen any of the other movies in. I hesitate to call it franchise, but I'm going to because there's so many. So I don't know how 54 and on, how they do the plot, if there are big changes to it. But I'm surprised that the movies start out based around these female characters, starry-eyed, wanting to go to Hollywood. But they really put a lot of emotional investment into these two male characters of Max in What Price Hollywood and Norman in A Star Is Born, and really it's more a story about them and them dealing with the main character's success and how it affects them. And I was not expecting that. It's like they changed the main character as the story went on, and then at the end, after both of those characters meet their demise, they go back to the original main character.
Yeah, it's actually... now that I think about it, it's actually a really early case of a symmetric plot. Which is one of my favorite, which is one of my favorite storytelling tropes, where it ends as it begins, but it actually kind of switches off in kind of a yin yang sort of deal, where it has our characters, our first main character starting off in this low place, not much to be said of them, and then they rise to the top, all the while at the exact same, at an inverse rate, our once great character is falling further and further down. No matter, each of them have ups and downs throughout, but each one is kind of mirrored off each other. Like every time there's a jump in the lead girl's popularity, there's a drop in the lead man's popularity, and then vice versa. But that's actually really interesting to see, because like it shows in each case when they're at their peak, that mainly being when they're receiving their Academy Award, it's when the other is at their lowest, that being Norman stumbling on the stage drunk, and then Max getting in the drunk tank that night. It's like, wow, that's actually kind of cool to notice now.
That's because I hadn't really considered for theming. I know why it's there. They sort of represent this cautionary tale for the main character to relate to, I guess, to make them better, because it's like, this is what stardom and fame can do to you. Hollywood can either be stressful and drive you mad, or it can eat you up and spit you out with no appreciation or no regard. And that's sort of for the actress to relate to, whether it be Esther or Mary. They can sort of look at that and see that, but I don't think they use that a whole lot. I guess it's more for the audience's sake.
Yeah.
But yeah, storytelling wise, I think it's cool, and I think it's unique, because they really do sort of take on the role of main character symmetrically to who you originally think the main character is, rather than they're a secondary character that just has an emotional backstory.
Right.
And like I said, I'm interested in how the other films handle that as well, especially the most recent one that came out this year.
Yeah.
That apparently got rave reviews.
Oh, yeah. I kept seeing ads all over the place for it. That's how you know it gets really good reviews, is when the ads don't go away for a long time.
Yeah.
That's another, like, to just, like, really drag this point of it out. But another thing I was thinking of it with, their symmetrical, like, plot lines, and how they are, like, just how their journeys go, like being at a low point or being at a high point. It's also how they're viewed in the public media within the movie. Like, it starts off, with Max being like this lush on the town. Everybody knows him. Everyone's talking about him, versus nobody talking about Mary. But at the very end, as Max dies, and Mary gets swept up into the public drama of the suicide, it's put her at her peak and Max at his lowest, where it's like, oh, no one cares about the fact that Max is dead. They care about, Mary being with, like, in the same building when it happened, that sort of thing. So it's it really does make it that ultimate moment of, perfect parallelism.
The same sort of thing happens when Norman dies too. I don't remember a lot of tabloid stuff, like press related material regarding it. More so, I'm thinking of when they're exiting the funeral and the fans are all around her, and that one woman's like, he isn't worth crying or whatever, and rips her veil off.
Oh, yeah.
And then she screams.
Yeah. And then it even kind of, like, even with the last line, like the very iconic, hello, this is Mrs. Norman Maine. Like, that even kind of hammers it home. It's like, now she has taken his place. Like, at, peak stardom.
Right.
Which, like, it's also meant to be, like, her relating back to him, since she truly cared for him, but it also
she's keeping him alive.
Right. So, yeah, that's actually really kind of cool to notice.
Right. And I think that works better, having those characters. In this instance, I think that having those characters combined does better for the film.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was kind of okay with the character being combined, though I was a little confused by the addition of having... Oh, what was the assistant director's name?
Danny
Casey?
McGuire.
Oh, Danny McGuire.
Yeah, Casey was
the other
Casey in the original movie.
Oh. Yeah, like
Carrie.
But yeah, like the assistant director guy that she meets in like the boarding house, like I kind of thought that was a little weird to have in there as well, because like it ended up not being too necessary. Where he basically is not in the plot nearly at all by the end. Like it was really just kind of meant to be the kickstarting action of getting her actually involved in Hollywood, which like I guess makes sense, but it also kind of seems like it was kind of shoehorned in.
Yeah. That is, yeah, that was strange. It went well because I watched What Price Hollywood first. I thought he was going to play the role of Max.
Right.
Especially what I thought, with that voice.
Max,
it sounded. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like I was thinking the exact opposite. Like I saw it in the opposite direction. So I saw Max, and I was thinking, okay, he's gonna be like the background character as Lonnie becomes the main focus.
Right.
But then he wasn't.
I guess it's just the way the actor talks. I haven't seen him or heard him in anything else, but this Andy Devine that played Danny McGuire, I believe I've heard his name before. But just the way he...
Western. His IMDb shows him in a cowboy outfit, so...
Okay, that's probably it then, because I don't watch a lot of Westerns. But just the way
he was in Stagecoach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
Wayne. And along with the man who shot Liberty Valance, another John Wayne.
Right, but the way he talks is just... it sounds like he's consistently drunk. So I was like, he is Max's part.
Mm-hmm. He was also in How the West Was Won, so I think he has a type.
I guess he was mainly a Western actor.
Yeah, I mean, when his IMDb photo literally is just him in cowboy garb holding a fucking 6-shooter.
Oh my god.
Yeah. My god, he was born in Flagstaff, Arizona. This guy was born for it.
You were born to be in pictures. A very specific type of pictures, but pictures.
I mean, hey, you probably netted him a decent sum.
There was something I wanted. What was it? Oh, the inclusion of family.
Yeah, that.
Because What Price Hollywood, she's sort of separated. You know, she's on her own, and perhaps it's picking up naturally where it's sort of cut scenes, you could say, where she's out on her own now, working as a waitress, but you don't see anyone for her to relate back to. Whereas in A Star Is Born, they have scenes with the family and with the grandma that gives her a speech that I really liked about when they were pioneering to the new part of the country and how she never gave up and how she buried her husband where he wanted to be buried, and I really like that. But they have this family that even though she's in this new wild place, she's working as a waitress at the assistant director's suggesting, she still sort of has a baseline that she can relate to. Even if they're not there, you know that they're there. And she has something to fall back on, as you see at the end of the movie where she's planning on moving back to North Dakota. So she has somewhere to go if she hits her lowest point. Right. And I thought that was interesting. They sort of built her a safety net into the story just in case things went really badly.
Yeah, which actually, unless you have like more to talk about on this point, which actually kind of will lead me into a complaint I have about A Star Is Born.
No, that's fine. That's just something I noticed. I don't think I have anything to say on it at this point.
It's things like that where it's like it has this safety net thing, and it has the main character be, pretty generic feeling in a lot of ways, and all these other if she's very the way I've always thought about it, it's like she's a redheaded character in this a redheaded lady character in this kind of movie. She's meaning she is flawed, but she is also hopelessly generic. And so my big complaint is that so much of A Star Is Born is just moments of course it's this, or of course it's that. It feels very much like one of those old movies where everything feels like a trope of itself, even though it probably set the trope in the first place. Whereas in What Price Hollywood, it seems to have a bit more teeth. Like the main lead, she has, she has more moments of just being outright hostile towards other characters. She's more outspoken. She's more outwardly ambitious just as a character in general, and she has kind of more of a strength to her than than Esther in A Star Is Born. It's just so much of A Star Is Born just feels like it's a very safe version of What Price Hollywood. Like What Price kind of really, it kind of did some weird stuff. Like, it had her running off with this lush of a director type. In any other situation, that's like, oh, like that's not something you want to tell. It seems like they kind of cleaned that up for A Star Is Born. It's more saying, oh, girls, you don't want to run away with this random drunk director who's just doing all these things willy-nilly. You want to run away with this starlet, like this kind of big name actor type who's attractive in every way, and who's also a flawed character. So he's not perfect, but he's still very good for you in a way. And so it's just, so much of it just feels like a watered down version of a more intense and ultimately kind of interesting story.
Okay. No, I agree with you. I actually have 2 points to go with this. One, just so we make something clear, because I don't think I mentioned it at the beginning.
Yeah.
So What Price Hollywood is actually a film, came out in 1932, which is 2 years before the code was introduced for motion pictures. So this is actually a pre-code movie, which allowed it to be racier and sexier because there wasn't a code that they had to adhere to. Whereas A Star Is Born falls in the code period, where there are very strict rules they have to apply by, or else their film would not be released. Not to say that there aren't other things that they could do, but there are some things that I feel they were held back by studios from doing because they felt it would be too racy or out there for audiences.
I do remember thinking that, because at the beginning of What Price, there's a scene where it shows Mary getting like dressed to go to work and like getting dressed up for the evening, and it just straight up shows her like putting on stockings and everything with a near like just up the skirt shot, where I'm like, holy crap, that's racy by today's standards.
Yeah, they didn't have to play by any rules before 1934.
Yeah, and so like that really surprised me, and I was like, oh, okay, this is just kind of doing its own deal. Which I realized that there was a code for, like, there were like a set of codes for early Hollywood. I just didn't know when it got implemented. I could have sworn it would have been before that.
Right. Well, I think it was written around 30, but it wasn't introduced until 34.
Right.
So, the other point I wanted to make is jumping off of yours. That's actually something that I remember thinking is, correct me if I'm wrong, but in What Price Hollywood, she goes to the screen test and she's awful because she has way too much ambition. Her eyes are bigger than her plate. And so she has to practice and train, and that's sort of a flaw of hers. You get to see her be a terrible, naive actress, and Max actually, not to her face, but is like, yeah, we might need to get someone else to do this. She's not doing it. And then she's like, okay, I got to get better at this. I don't remember them having a scene like that in A Star Is Born. I'm pretty sure it's just like, all right, we'll have the screen test soon. And then she goes straight to signing a contract and having her name changed.
I think there's a brief moment of it. I think honestly can't remember. A lot of those earlier scenes kind of fly by in my memory for some reason. But if there was a scene of it, it was brief. I know they had to do I know she had to do like something with like a posture coach at the very least, because she had to reinvent herself into this new character like Vicky Lester.
Right.
But I don't know whether or not they explicitly did the screen test and they were like, okay, no, this is terrible.
Right. So, yeah, I didn't remember a scene like that happening, so I was curious.
Yeah, it was more focused on the idea of this girl, this pure innocent girl must be broken down into this new different system, versus the original one was like, no, she's just a bad actress right now. It's just like, which is a bit more, which it feels a lot more realistic. Mm-hmm. It's like she does like from the day from it seems like in A Star Is Born, from day one Esther is like from moment when we see her, Esther is just this pure pinnacle who deserves everything in the world because of her ambition and her ability to do all these things, despite the harsh critics of Hollywood telling her she's not going to be nothing. Versus Mary just being like, oh no, she's using her wits to, and she's taking advantage of the situation to take advantage of this very drunk popular director to try and hang out with him to try and get a spot, and then ultimately it shows she's not actually that good, but she self-improves to get good enough,
right.
And then that actually ends up paying off.
And not to mention Esther's mean aunt tells her that she can't do it, but her grandma knows better.
And then how that one casting, coach was like, "Oh, there's only a 1 in 100,000 chance you'll get in," and it's like, fucking shush.
That was kind of cool. The when she first goes in and she's like, "I'd like to apply to be an extra," and the woman gets up from the desk and shows her all of the telephone operators, where it's like, you see all those lights? Those are all people that have dreams just like yours.
Yeah. I did like that.
At first, I didn't know where that was going. I thought she was like, okay, you'll start here. I thought it was like, we don't have jobs for actresses or for extras right now, so you're going to be working as a telephone operator. And it's like, well, this is very different from the original movie.
Yeah, it's like, what the heck?
But no, I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really
that's more representative than just saying a number, anyways.
Yeah,
is showing something like that than just saying a statistic.
Right, but she did end up saying it's a statistic anyways as well.
She did, but since they had that in there, I just I didn't feel like it mattered, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the growth arc of Mary is a lot more believable and ultimately more admirable than that of Esther's. Because Esther just kind of seems like everything kind of gets not necessarily handed to her, but a lot of it does seem like luck.
Right.
Versus, Mary's clearly been working at this one particular restaurant for a long time, and she's seen directors come in and out all the time, and she's trying to work her best to do it. And now what we're seeing is her one time she actually got one to take her on. And versus, Esther gets there within like 2 weeks, she's gotten her big break.
Yeah, it does happen pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, she said she's been there, when she goes into the extra office, she does say that she's been there a month. Though I don't know if I buy that. Because what has she been doing for a month? She really wanted to get into the acting business.
Yeah, because we don't actually see her doing any kind of other job other than
maybe she was
when
lying.
She waitresses that one place.
Yeah, and I mean, that was after the fact, too.
Exactly.
That was after she said she's been there a month. So either she's been bumming around doing nothing, or she went to a bunch of places before that we didn't see, or she's just a liar.
Yeah. Which is a very possible thing. She was just being like, to try to make her situation better.
Right. Maybe make herself seem a little less
desperate,
starry-eyed, doleful.
Oh, yeah. Which she's not exactly the smartest cookie. I don't think she would have been smart enough to pull that off. like between the two of them, she is definitely not the smarter one.
Maybe she just lied because she didn't actually lie. She forgot how long she'd been there.
Yeah, that makes sense. She'd probably be like, "Oh, it feels like I've been here for a month."
I believe that.
Yeah.
If we're gonna keep on this theme, by the way, I mentioned in A Star Is Born the grandma's speech at the beginning. I really liked. Mm-hmm. Sort of you're gonna have to give your heart a part of you. That was everything that she said meant a lot, and I thought that it was said in the right way. And just old women in old Hollywood are always portrayed as badasses.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene. Her speech at the end of the movie was very disappointing.
A little.
It's like she sort of brings it around near the end, like, you can't give up, don't be a quitter, you can do it. Which by the end it's a bit too late for me. But she starts it out by being like, oh, quit whining. I'm sorry I ever gave you that money. It's like, lady, her husband just died. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, we can have this conversation later. Like after the mourning period, at least a little.
Yeah, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I liked you, and now you show up for a second scene and you try to destroy everything that you created in the first scene for this character.
And I guess this isn't really like a particular point, but like I was thinking about that. It's like, why were a lot of old Hollywood old women portrayed as these badasses? But then I thought about literally what she says at the beginning. Old women in old Hollywood literally probably migrated across the country. And
yeah,
then,
in those big pioneer wagons, and they
Yeah.
watched death, and they had to bury their loved ones.
they've probably been through the Civil fucking War.
They might have been bitten in the deserts. Or the
Yeah.
plains, I guess.
So like everyone's grandma back then would have been a freaking badass because they're still around at that point.
Right.
It's like,
I do like that line she says at the beginning. She's like, take this money. I've been saving it for my funeral, but I don't think I'm ever going to die.
exactly. And it's also even cooler to think about. It's like they live in North fucking Dakota. Having been to North Dakota in the modern era, it takes a badass to live there. I can't imagine how it used to be. It's just, yeah, that is really cool to think about. There should have been more movies about them.
Just about them? Yeah.
Yeah, just centered on them, or like watching their entire lives go through, like from the Oregon Trail all the way up, or if I guess Dakota Trail, which is like you made it most of the way, but you're like, nah.
I guess I'll settle here.
Or like one of the like 8 million, or like one of the one or two major, like government things are like, hey, if you go out to this area and settle it, we'll give you free land.
I'll take it.
It's utterly worthless, and the only thing you can grow are onions and sheep. But it's free land.
I'll still take it. You can grow sheep? I'll take it.
Yeah.
So
And fun fact, listeners, that's how my family got here. Started off as dirt poor sheep farmers in Montana.
I'm glad you've come so far.
Yeah, now I'm a dirt poor podcaster.
It's my career. We were bringing that up. I'm kind of wondering if it would have been better had the grandma not showed up again. What if instead they had the aunt go there, and she's like mean to her, like, I told you couldn't do it, blah 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 blah. But then it's like, are you really gonna quit? And her hardness makes Esther realize, no, this is what I wanted all along.
I think maybe like either that, or maybe the aunt kind of has like not necessarily a change of heart, but has the same hardness, but telling her in the other direction. She's like, she says like, oh, I knew you couldn't have made it, or it's like, or not necessarily that. She's like, oh, come on, you went all this way and you complained to me for years of your life to be able to do this, and now you're just giving it up. It's like that sort of thing. Like I think
she would have been better for that.
Yeah, like I think that would have been, and it would have been a cooler, change of heart, kind of extra like little extra nail in the. Well, I'm not gonna say nail in the coffin. That's not the right phrase here, especially since Amanda's died. But like the extra like final push for her ultimate character arc, where she goes from doughy North Dakota girl to starlet with like tough as nails type, who's actually been through the roughest parts of Hollywood at that point.
Yeah, and referring to what are your thoughts on this? With that speech aside, I kind of think the ending is better in A Star Is Born, because she goes through that hardship, and they have that really cool scene where Max decides to kill himself, where he sort of reflects on who he used to be.
Right.
But after she moves to Paris, that really quick Lonnie shows up, take me back, but that takes a lot away from me, or for me.
Yeah,
I think it ruins a lot of it at the last possible minute.
It's kind of like in that moment they both kind of switched themes really quickly. Like in the new one, like in What Price, it has her go from I've been doing this all on my own, I'm a badass, I can do this, and then it goes to I'm just a doughy person who needs her husband back sort of deal, versus A Star Is Born. She's completely alone at this point, and with her both mentor and lover at that point dead, she has to take up and be like, no, I'm not standing on anyone's shoulders anymore. I've become my own person, but I still owe it to them, and so I'll honor them in that respect.
Yeah,
it does. It is an incredible ending. Like I have to give it to it. Like that line alone. Hello, this is Mrs. Norman. Shit. I forgot. It's like
Maine. I almost said Norman Mailer. It's Norman Maine.
Yeah, Norman Maine. That's fucking. Oh, this iconic line that I can't remember.
The iconic character whose name I forgot.
The iconic line. Hello, I am Norman Bates. I'm here to murder you.
I'm Norman Lear.
I'm here to murder you. I am my mother.
I am Norman Fell.
I'm Norman Osborn. I'm the Green Goblin.
We can't do this now.
Yeah, no. Anyway, like it's such an iconic line, and just like that final shot and everything. It is an incredible ending for as much crap as they give the rest of the movie. It is definitely having Lonnie come back in the original. It does kind of take away from really that whole arc. It's just like Lonnie. I kind of hoped, not necessarily that Lonnie would have been gone forever. Maybe like have him come back and at least be as a friend, maybe to kind of help round things out a little bit. But the whole full-on take me back sort of thing, that I was like, all right, because of course.
Especially since he essentially has their son kidnapped by detectives.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing that happens right before he asks her to take him back.
Yeah, that's a little much.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I guess that's just kind of how they had.
The rest of the film is so good too.
Yeah, which I guess back in the day, that's really the biggest thing you could do. That you'd have to get someone's attention, so you didn't exactly have cell numbers at that point.
I mean, true. Just in general,
But yeah, that doesn't make it okay.
I don't even think the situation should have been there at the ending, because it's like a complete shift. Like, even if he was like, will you take me back? And then she says no, and then it cuts to... I still wouldn't have liked it. Like, don't even have that in there. That's such an abrupt thing. We focused on Max for so long. Why do we care about this right now?
It does seem kind of like they didn't know how to end the movie at that point, because they rightly couldn't have ended it right at Max's suicide. That would have been too depressing.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, they didn't have but they still had a lot of loose ends, I guess, in that one, which I do appreciate. A Star is Born having less loose ends in that regard. Like, you know, not having the extra son bit and having, you know, the mentor and lover be the same character, which made some other loose ends, like with the assistant director and everything, and like the press agent. Which, can I just say very briefly for the press agent, why the hell was he a mobster?
1, I don't know. 2, he was my favorite character in the movie.
Yeah, same. Like, honestly, it's just like he was completely unironically he was somewhere in between like Scarface police officer and Scarface.
Lionel Stander is so delightful as a prick.
Yeah, really. Oh my god, it's just I kept seeing him on screen. Like when he first shows up, he's like in the police station. I could have like, because he's talking about, you know, Norman was like having a joyride in an ambulance. I could have sworn he was going to be like, oh, this is just some random cop. I was like, no, he's his press agent. What? That'd be like if I had like a manager or like a casting agent, but he just talked like a pirate for no apparent reason. He was just like super cockney and had an eye patch, but he was completely, for all intents and purposes, just like a normal, like kind of pretty boring dude.
That gives him more character?
I guess. Like, I think that I swear they must have just picked up this guy from when he was working on like another mobster movie or something. He was like, "Hey, can you show up for a couple scenes?" He's like, "I can't break character. That's fine."
They pulled him over from Soundstage 3.
Yeah, it's just, I love him so much.
He is great. And if we're talking about favorites, there are a lot of great characters in What Price Hollywood, but honestly, Julius, the producer, Mr. Sachs, he is great. For one, I love people with foreign accents, especially in movies like in older films.
Of course.
But he is so fun. He reminds me a lot of was the character's name in the original Ocean's 11, who Sinatra and Dean Martin kept messing with.
Oh, the Greek guy.
Yeah, I loved him too.
I cannot remember his name, but it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm gonna look it up.
All right, that's fine. But he was a great character, and it actually, because Max is one of my favorite characters too, and they have really great play between them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that scene where they're at the pool, right after it's a little after Lonnie and Mary get married, and they're at the pool talking about movies to make, and what is it? Sax is like, oh, I bought these pictures. One is a mythological creation film, and the other is this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Max is like, I don't want to direct either of those. You should read them before you buy them. And he stands up. He goes, I can read.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, also, the guy's name was Spiros Aesopus.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, the very, very Greek.
Very much so.
May as well named him Euro. Is
But,
that racist? I'm sorry.
Maybe. I don't care.
The Greeks have had a hard time of it lately. I shouldn't make fun of them.
I'm not going to get into
Also,
that.
hello, train, by making the loudest noise ever. My God.
It's all right. I can't hear it.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well, my microphone might have heard it, so.
Okay.
Say
I
hello
heard the
to
one earlier.
Say hello to the 7 o'clock train audience.
I heard the one earlier. I just ignored it.
Oh.
So, what do you think, though? Who do you like in these? Let's get some characters in there.
I mean, I've already praised Mary up and down, so she's probably my favorite character in really both of the films.
Right.
Who's there are a lot of just like I actually kind of like the boarding house guy in A Star Is Born.
Oh, in A Star Is Born?
Because he's equal parts like a genuine good guy and that kind of gruff kind of like oy vey sort of deal. Because like there's a moment in the movie where it's like he's berating the girl, like he's writing up the bill for Esther. He's like, oh, if she just paid me, all this wouldn't be a problem. But then he immediately takes it back out of the thing and tears it up because he, like, I guess feels sorry for her or like wants to help her out or something. But then immediately afterwards, he gets really annoyed because she gets a call in the middle of the night that she has to give off.
I like that scream that he does.
Yeah.
Would you tell him it's 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah. And then it follows up immediately, like he's going back to, like he's waiting at the top of the stairs as she sulks back into her room, like kind of guiltily, and then he just kind of accidentally walks into a lamp and it just pops. It's like
I forgot about that.
And he just goes, oh, it's like it's they had to have some way of ending the scene, but they just had to keep kicking the shit out of him. It's like I felt kind of bad for him by the end.
What I gotta know, what is his motive? Is he playing the field? Because I sort of thought about this. He seems to flip flop between his emotions, like what he is thinking, and that really comes to light when Danny, the assistant director, when he's first introduced at the boarding house, and Esther runs up to him and she's like, "Oh, I just love to be in pictures. I got to be in pictures," and he like screams at her. While he's berating her, he like gives a nod to the guy at the desk, and the guy at the desk like agrees with him. He's like, "Oh yeah, you told her," and then she runs off crying, and he's like, "Now look what you did."
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I thought that was really strange. I was like, "What? Whose side is he on, or does he just not care? Because these are all just tenants to him."
Honestly, there's a certain point with me where like I try to analyze stuff, but I think there's just a certain point I just have to tell myself this is just a badly written character. I think it's like
I mean that's possible.
For as much crap as we give ourselves like to analyze and all that sort of stuff, in movies old and new, there's just a certain point we can go, this is just wasn't well written. It's like,
they don't know what the character is.
They weren't doing a good job with this one. So it's just, I really just think like he's just an extra character to kind of propel things, to kind of fill in the plot hole of where is she living, and so it also gives the excuse of how she encounters, the other director guy.
Yeah, because he has to introduce her to Danny as he's going to his room or coming down from his room, something like that. So
Yeah.
I guess she wouldn't know otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Also,
I should say,
they do get good mileage out of him with him screaming and running into lamps and.
he's a comic relief character, among which there are a couple, I guess, in the film, but still.
Yeah, because, I mean, he eventually disappears because she doesn't have to live there anymore. So it's just like, all right, well, he's gone. So is the assistant director. Just get him out of here.
He's more just like the Act 1 comic relief.
Yeah.
Also, I should say I did find the rules don't apply. It was directed by and stars Warren Beatty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that guy.
I know him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wrote the title down earlier. I'm gonna look it up later.
IMDb is a bit scathing on it. I only gave it like a 5.2.
Well, IMDb is not necessarily critic reviews; it's audience. So we'll see about that.
True. Or sorry, 5.7.
It's the same way Rotten Tomatoes works. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
I said anyways. I didn't necessarily know where I wanted to go with that though.
There's the problem with these older movies is that there's a certain, well, not necessarily with older movies, but with more dramatic plots like this, that there's not a whole lot to go on beyond like just the immediate story and immediate, motivations of the main characters, because there's no major effects or major plot like devices that can be criticized, because a lot of it's just driven by genuine actions by the character rather than we're in space and we need to not be in space or something like that. It's the future and we can fall through the entire earth. That's a major plot point in and of itself. So it's hard to get more mileage out of it beyond that, because we've clearly kind of gutted A Star Is Born for its kind of more not necessarily simplisticness by comparison, but it's just not as well made, honestly.
It's more audience friendly, really.
Yeah, it's true. Audience, that's what I've got to figure out a term for that. It's just it's the frosted mini wheats of a movie versus
Are you bringing this back, comparing movies to food? You did this a couple episodes ago where you were like, this is the Big Mac.
I haven't eaten yet. I gotta stop doing these when I'm hungry.
I like what you're doing. You can do it all you want.
I mean, it's just but you know what I mean. It's that very kind of like you said yourself, it's a very consumer based version of an already superior story. Yeah.
What price Hollywood is the Toblerone?
And A Star Is Born is what, the Twix?
The Twix.
the Hershey bar.
Call it.
Probably the Hershey bar, actually.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually probably a good apropos.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. I love it when I accidentally do something smart. I wish it happened more often.
You're right. For both of these, they're pretty well just dramatic. They're also kind of equal parts romance films that focus on rise and fall. Yeah. Even though they don't, those stories are kind of happening at the same time. There's not much to go off of from there. I can't even really say. I mean, we can give general cultural differences since it is so far in the past that we can just compare it to our own, but we can't really compare them to each other because they're made within 5 years of each other. There's no major cultural shifts other than the codes of Hollywood being implemented, which we've already brought up. Yeah. It's when we start doing some of the newer versions of it, which God help us if we do, that's going to take a while. That'll probably be a good time to compare them then, but otherwise a lot of it's just so steeped really in itself that it's hard to kind of say anything about it. Hollywood for years has always just had a thing of sucking itself off. It's just you can look at the what was it? Was it The Artist? The silent film released in 2012 or something. Oh yeah, didn't that win? It was at least nominated for Best Picture. I
don't think it won Best Picture, but the main actor got Best Actor.
Okay, yeah, I remember that year.
Yeah, and then we never saw him again.
He disappeared. He walked into
Yeah.
the ocean, never came out.
I mean, that's basically what happened with Leonardo DiCaprio. So.
He's back.
Oh yeah.
There is some, if you don't mind me sucking some people off for a bit.
Go right ahead, my friend. If anyone's gonna.
I'll just sit back and watch. With the exception of Norman's death scene, the cinematography in A Star Is Born, I feel, is pretty tepid. It doesn't do a whole lot outside of here's a shot of people and they're doing stuff. What Price Hollywood, even when it doesn't work, they do a lot of unique things to try and portray people's emotions, people's emotional states, what they're going through.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and a lot of times it works. The only one that was kind of jarring to me is when Mary's screen test, her successful screen test, is first seen by everyone, and Sachs is talking about making her a household name. She's in the frame with the board members and with Sachs and Max, but while he's giving this speech, it cuts to her for a brief second where she's like starry-eyed looking up into nothing.
Yeah, that one was weird.
With a curtain behind her, I guess because she's imagining herself in the spotlight. That one was jarring. But everything else I thought was pretty cool.
I always thought that shot in particular was just because they needed a filler shot. Like, they needed to cut that one scene in half, so they needed a random filler shot.
That could be true.
If they just kind of use it as tape, in a way.
Yeah, we'll patch this together a little bit, but the other actors couldn't make it.
Yeah, otherwise, there's a lot of cool scenes. Like, there's, when when it first shows her montage of hitting stardom, it shows her, like, with, like, all these sparklers and stuff overlaid kind of, like, lightly over the frame as it shows her, like, getting closer to the camera as it literally shows her, like, growing in popularity. And then right after Max dies, it shows the exact same scene but opposite, where it shows her sulking and sad as she slowly sinks to the background as this, scandal overtakes her.
Yeah, those scenes were actually kind of scary too, because they're, at least in the first one, because it's sort of showing her success. At the very end, there's a bunch of hands clapping overlaid over the darkness, and it looks like Porky and Wacky Land. That was kind of scary, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where Max is in the dressing room right before he commits suicide with that gun. Yeah. He looks into the mirror and it's sort of him, like, blinking really hard, like dazed, while it's overlaid with scenes from him in a top hat and the jail bars. It's like him reflecting on his life and how far he's fallen.
And it does it again right when he shoots himself. It does like a quick, like, super rapid fire, a bunch of shots from earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Which I actually loved. I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. I haven't seen that in a lot
I
of
guess
films.
it's sort of representing his life flashing before his eyes is sort of the generic feel of that. But it's still well done. I have to praise the editing, I guess. It's not even necessarily cinematography, but the editor who worked on that did very well.
It's also really cool because it's also for the benefit of the audience to feel for it, because, we've been with that character the entire film. And, sometimes by the end of a film, you kind of, earlier scenes sometimes kind of fall to the background as other scenes have taken our forefront in the memory. But then it immediately shows all those other moments we've seen of him, of having, like, him at the top, him at the bottom, and that just shoots by really fast, where it's like, oh, shit, this guy's dead. Like, he's just straight up ended it all. And it's like, I saw that scene. It actually hit me harder than I thought it would. I was like, wow, that's actually really impactful.
Yeah.
So I thought that was brilliant doing that. Like, and just how simple it was. It's like back in Scarface, like that one transition of the Tommy gun firing as the
over the calendar
page is being ripped off, where it's like,
that's got to be like highlight of the year for me.
Oh yeah, like, oh my god, it's just like, I love little cool transitions like that, especially in early Hollywood, because that really was one of those moments of low technology means greater creativity. And so that's just, it's like little moments like that that really felt like that happened.
Yeah.
So it did What Price Hollywood did a lot of cool shots.
They did. And yeah, not to leave A Star Is Born out, I feel like most of it was, like I said, pretty by the books. But it is really beautifully shot, even if not beautifully edited. at the ocean when he's walking into it and it shows his clothes getting washed on the beach, and you just know he's not coming back, even if you hadn't seen What Price Hollywood, which you had before. You know that he's gone.
Oh, I knew. I was like, oh no, that's happening. Like that one did get me because and suicide's always just such a dark subject in and of itself, obviously, and so even that happening, I was like, it's hard to do that scene without it being impactful, but they still did it really well. And it's like, it's also just, I should just say also, A Star Is Born, beautiful film just in general. Like it's the first use of like actual good Technicolor film. Like it literally even says on the trivia, like before that, all Technicolor film had been very garish looking. A lot of the color was too like had the contrast turned up way too much. But this one was a lot more muted, more realistic. It was the first one that was actually lauded very well for it. And then it made way for I think the director actually, what was the director of this one?
William A. Wellman.
Yeah, and didn't he also direct Gone with the Wind?
I think so, or he was an assistant director. I saw something like that.
Yeah, like it says, like at least on the trivia, that this kind of helped pave the way for, the masterpiece Gone with the Wind, and it itself also being fully in color, which it's also done very well.
It's worth notice. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it's like, but really, I was just gonna say, it's like really, A Star Is Born. It was pretty much the trendsetter for color film from that point, or at least it made it so that it was possible, and then Gone with the Wind made it the trendsetter.
Right. Well, it's worth noting as well. I didn't read this on a trivia page, but I know I read it somewhere. I believe this is the only Technicolor film that Janet Gaynor, who played Esther, it's the only Technicolor film she ever did. I think most of what she did was silent film work, or not silent, but black and white. So to somehow, I guess, avoid all the really outlandish colors of those early non-black and white pictures, to go into something that does have fairly beautiful lighting and landscapes with these matching colors that don't necessarily ruin scenes. I think that's really unique. Mm-hmm. It's unique for her career.
Yeah.
That she could end up being in something like this and somehow avoid the ones that look worse.
Yeah.
Also, talking about the suicide at the end of that, I also like how dark it was in that, in most any film made now, mainly a romantic drama, but films like that, a character like Libby, the press agent, would have gotten comeuppance for what they were doing. But in this one, Norman is dead, and then it cuts to him talking about it's hilarious that he's dead and he hated him and it doesn't matter, and then nothing happens with that.
Yeah, I did like that they kind of they despite all the other moments of like, oh yeah, this is the most idealistic situation, at the end it really did kind of be like, no, this stuff's harsh and it's not going to be forgiving.
Yeah, the
and
only idealistic
bad people
part
will win sometimes.
Yeah, the only idealistic part about the ending at all is that she's somehow able to move on from it, and that's more so life, and not necessarily that's how everyone works in life, but that is a part of life that doesn't seem to be pandering.
Right.
When it's done, it's just like, well, that's what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. And that really does get summed up with the last line. Like, that kind of is the whole big thing of, she really isn't moving on, and that's okay. Like, she's very, like, in any other situation, like, the ultimate parallelism is she's completely on her own, and there's no connection to Norman at all at that point, which is practically what happens in What Price Hollywood. She's pretty much completely separate from Max at that point. But in doing that last act of calling herself Mrs. Norman, it's just, it kind of wraps it up a bit nicer. Like, it's like, okay, this is actually how someone would deal with the situation.
Yeah.
Or at least it's how someone would deal with the situation put into a line, rather than actually having to show the deep emotional impact it would have on such a character.
And I definitely did. I did appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
But
so, for as much as crap as we have given A Star Is Born, it really does wrap it up at the end.
Oh yeah, it does it, and I think it does it way better than the other one.
Yeah, definitely.
So, last bits before we really wrap it up. Any shots or scenes of note that you want to bring up that we haven't already talked about ad nauseum?
I mean, I think my favorite shot in particular, at least for What Price Hollywood, really just that entire ending dialogue between Mary and Max. Like it was really intense and poignant between the two of them. It was like, okay, yeah, these are two people that have known each other for years and have really just kind of come to what is clearly the end of the line for Max. It's like whether each of them know it full well or not at that point, but it's just how it was shot well. The lighting was great. The acting was great. I love the whole thing of it.
Right.
That was probably my favorite bit. Other than that, I can't really think of anything in particular.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we actually did cover on all the stuff that we really enjoyed. I can't think of anything else either. I was just curious.
Yeah, these are both very good movies.
Yeah. So
to a point, obviously.
Yeah, if we're going to jump into this now, we say this a lot, but based on what I have said, at least, I think it's fairly clear which one I prefer. Though I have to say, for the first time in a really long while, it is really hard for me to decide. I haven't really had a situation like this. I don't think since one of the earlier episodes where it's sort of a toss up for me. But
right.
in the end, especially with what I've been saying, What Price Hollywood I think does a lot better.
Mm-hmm. If only because it has less restrictions for itself.
That's true. I feel if it was made with code, a lot of that would be stripped.
Mm-hmm. And that should be noted really for anything we end up doing is like back in the day when codes were a lot stricter than they are now compared to each other. It's sometimes unfair for certain films not doing certain things, but at the same time, there have been films who have worked around that in one way or another.
We both I mean, going off of that, Scarface came out the same year as What Price Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. That's obvious.
Yeah, but Scarface 83, I think it was, the one with Al Pacino, did a lot more because, I mean, that's in the 80s. That's 50 years away. It can do a lot more, but that doesn't necessarily mean it did it better. Yeah. So, I mean, it goes both ways. There can be workarounds as well to make just a better picture. And I feel like even without code, they could have made an equally good picture with What Price Hollywood. Would it have been better? I don't know, but I don't think it would have been bad.
No. And neither of these movies are bad. Like, for as much as crap as I have given A Star Is Born, it's like, this one it wasn't that hard for me to pick, because I always say, I always default down to what I think is just a better made film, especially when they're so close together in time frame. But it still was, A Star Is Born still was very good. It's hard to fault. It's hard to choose it over, What Price, when it's just like there's so many cool things that What Price did.
Yeah, I mean, if we're getting right down to it, when we compare these movies, one of the pictures, whether it deserves it or not, always seems to be getting beaten down or given the blunt end of the stick, because we're comparing aspects of the films, and even if it's just our opinion, one of them is going to be doing it better than the other. So it's going to seem as if we're being more negative, whether we actually are or not.
Yeah. And I wish there were more films that were closer in quality in general, but the problem by the very nature of remakes, one of them is going to pretty much always be worse, even if it's the older one compared to the newer one. It's just by the very nature, it's like either A, it's a bad movie that was remade to be made better, or B, it was a good movie that was tried to remade to recapture its magic, which never works. So,
right, and going off of that, I mean, if A Star Is Born had been a remake of What Price Hollywood, then the chances are it could have been bad, because it would have been trying to do the exact same things but with more limitations. But rather, it was working off of that screenplay, or the script, whatever. It was working off the script instead, So they were able to change more things around, and because it's a looser fit model, and they could fit it to the restrictions that they were given, and they could turn it into a different story while still keeping the beats relatively the same.
Right.
So that definitely helped. I feel if it was a straight remake of the same picture, it probably would have turned out worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, still, What Price Hollywood? Great freaking film.
Oh yeah, I'm glad I own it. And you know what? Like we said, A Star Is Born is pretty good too. The DVD that I bought for this movie has another film on it, Eternally Yours. I don't know its relation to A Star Is Born. I don't know why it's on the same disc, but I'm definitely going to look into it and probably watch it here shortly, because I feel like there has to be a reason it's on the same disc, or at least in the same pack. So, here's hoping that turns out well.
Yeah. Hey, and heck, maybe we'll go see we'll do something with some of the other A Star Is Born movies, and maybe those will have done even better. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we would be covering one of them, or even the most recent one, next week after this one, like we did with Halloween and Oceans, but we have something else planned. So we'll have to come back to that on at a later date.
Yeah, we got time.
We do. We do.
Hollywood's going to keep making remakes, but, we do it at our own damn pace.
We'll do.
It's like we know we can't keep up with Hollywood, so we're doing it on our own.
Yeah, we gotta just roll with the punch. I mean, you mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was just last week, that if we were to just go off of what Hollywood's doing, we would probably change the name of the podcast to Disney Remade It.
Yeah, it's like as we speak, Disney is already in the process of remaking fucking 4 of their old classics into live action movies.
Yeah,
2 of which already have trailers.
I'm not saying anything.
That being Lion King and Dumbo.
Yeah, that being said, I'm not going to say anything particularly bad about them, because I can't judge them just based off the trailers, especially since one is more of a teaser trailer than anything. But
right,
I will say that I don't necessarily have an interest in doing Aladdin or Lion King when they come out. Dumbo,
oh yeah, Aladdin as well.
I want to do Dumbo when it comes out.
Oh, same. I do.
I
love Dumbo.
Yeah, and that new one, Tim Burton, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but it looks interesting as hell. So
I think Tim Burton's a good fit for it.
Yeah, I mean that the original is really scary.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it since I was little, but I remember it being scary. The clowns scared me the most.
Right.
So they had like those fitted faces. It wasn't even paint for all of them. It was like head masks. It's horrifying. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Wrapping up our dirty laundry.
Yeah, it's like, we'll talk about that when it comes.
Yeah. So, real quick, let me just give the rundown.
Please do.
We are on most podcast platforms out there: Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Podbay. If you want, please rate us, review us, leave a comment, especially on the iTunes platform, because that helps with the ranking a lot, get more people to see it. We're hosted at Anchor, and that's mostly where all the links that I post to the Twitter, when I remember to post the links to the Twitter, that's where they'll direct you to, is to Anchor, but just keep in mind you can find them any podcast platform you have. We have our website, theyremadeit.com, which acts as an archive and also gives you a link to a lot of the download places for the different platforms we have. And I try to update that after every release. That's theyremadeit.com. Theyremadeit@gmail.com. Send any emails there. If you have any external reviews, if you have any suggestions, if you just want to send an email and say hi, those would be appreciated or discarded. I don't know.
Yeah, just acknowledge that we exist. That's always nice.
Yeah, and It Remade on Twitter. It's there. I think I've forgotten the last 2 times an episode has come out to post anything there, but I'll try to get better about that. And put stuff there. But I think that's everything. Yeah,
that should about wrap it up. Next week, or not next week, but next release period, we won't be doing a review, but we'll be doing a bit of something. Just keep an ear out for that one.
It'll probably end up being longer, too. I'm thinking around 2 hours, possibly even going a bit longer than that. But
yeah,
for the most part, it'll probably be unedited too. Like, I'll listen to it, but I don't think I'm going to add a bunch of stuff in.
They remade it. Uncut.
Finally! I want to hear more stuttering and stammering.
All the times where I fuck up my, opener stinger.
Go download our podcast online.
Go watch our stuff. I mean, listen to. I mean,
skip it.
Like, pass. As always, you're my. I have. God damn it.
And I'm your lovable host, Jacob.
And I'm Stuart. And also Stuart.
And also me.
But yeah. Does that mean we've signed off now?
No, you're the one that does the...
Oh, crap.
You're not supposed to break format.
I don't know. Where does the bit end and the podcast begin?
I guess wherever I put the cut.
Oh, yeah. Just putting the random cut beeps randomly throughout. Just like, and with the beep, 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 beep.
I'll do it.
Anyway... To wrap up properly, as always, I am your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
And we hope you have a lovely Christmas season. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Shalom, etc.
What is that? Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kooky Kwanzaa, and a respectful Ramadan. Good night.
Good night.
Women are getting fed up with the blonde type. Like I said, Latin types are coming back. Look at Clark Gable. He's through.
Yeah,
now listen.
Clark Gable.
An order of cold cuts from Mr. Bach's office.
You bet.
Hey, listen. The Latin types are coming back again. I just heard that big producer cracking to his yes man.
What'd I tell you? You can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't never fool the American women.